Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Camille Gaines, and this is BIMS Week 2. I am a marine scientist, and today we are going to have our BIMS reads. This is a new initiative where we're going to highlight Black authors. I'm extremely excited for today's author. I was introduced to her work last year, and it's just amazing. She is going to go through her book, and she is going to also have a Q&A. It's going to be moderated by Ngozi Oguguah. And I'm going to pass it off to Ngozi to formally introduce our author. Please stay with us for the whole event. We will be giving away one of her books at the end. So definitely enjoy the conversation. And yeah, Ngozi, handing it off.
It looks like Camille and Ngozi might be frozen. So could you continue and do the introduction until she comes back?
Yes. I don't mind doing that at all. Alexis Pauline Gumbs is a queer Black feminist love evangelist and an aspirational cousin to all life. She is/they are the author of several books, most recently Undrowned Black Feminist Lessons for Marine Mammals, and the co-founder of the Mobile Homecoming Trust, an intergenerational experiential living library of Black LGBTQ brilliance. Now let's read. Alexis, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you so much. Y'all, I'm so excited to be here. Happy Black Marine Science Week. I feel like it should be, a national festival holiday. I can't believe I missed trap yoga, but yeah, the events are so incredible. And just to say that you all as Black marine scientists are my dream audience. When I started doing the writing that became this book, or really the research for what became this book, one of the things that I noticed, I didn't miss trap yoga. Oh my gosh, that's so great. Okay, bringing it back together. I'm excited to see y'all later at trap yoga. And I found this, I had this moment when I was researching marine mammals and reading the scientific literature that had been written about them thus far. And I started to see that some of the terminology that came up in these studies was familiar to me. And it was familiar to me because it was the same terminology that I have seen and heard on the news to describe Black people. Describing hooded seals as vagrant juveniles when they're found outside of their range is technically accurate, but it's also very reminiscent of the way that young Black people are criminalized. And so I was having this great revelation, but I realized that's probably just like a regular Tuesday or Wednesday for Black folks who are involved in the field of marine sciences to come up against things that are like, maybe the way this is being talked about either doesn't take into account the perspectives of Black communities or shares similarities with some of the systems of oppression that we deal with just in our lives as Black folks. And maybe not. And so maybe part of the reason is that I'm here is to help make those connections. But I want to say that it's really special for me to be with an audience that has such an intimate relationship with marine life and with our oceans, which are so crucial. And also to say that I think that there is and we'll talk about this in the Q&A, but there is a lineage there. And I wanted to also offer just my primary definition of scientist, which as a Jamaican American child here in the United States goes back to Queen Nanny of the Maroons, who was an incredible warrior. And she was someone who fought colonialism for decades, and she was part of the community of Maroons who stole themselves outside of slavery and created a free society. And she was the leader of this group of Maroons, and the European colonizers thought that she had just superpowers. They were like, how does she create suddenly food sources where there were no food sources? And how does she lead these military battles that the whole British Army and Navy can't respond to effectively? The Maroons themselves called Nanny the great scientist because she was profoundly in relationship with her environment, like you are. And the second thing that made her the great scientist was she knew how to communicate with her ancestors. And so when I think of what it is to be a great scientist and what it means for me to be in the company of you all as great scientists, I think about the legacy and lineage of Queen Nanny of the Maroons. Okay, so this is a short excerpt, and then I'm very excited about this conversation, and I'm dedicating this to my father, Clyde Gumbs. The scientific community believes that the Caribbean monk seal is extinct. The last verified sighting was in 1952, a couple of years before my father was born. Turns out, one of the very first things Columbus and them did when they got to the Caribbean was to kill monk seals, 6 of them, immediately upon arrival. They say the Caribbean monk seal, born Black and proud, was never afraid of the colonizers. And in fact, they remained curious and calm. And the colonizers continued to use their own methods, which were fear-based and not calm at all, and genocidal. The oil in the blubber of Caribbean monk seals literally lubricated the machinery of the plantation economy. Without it, nothing could function. It is said that some plantations in the Caribbean required hunts for monk seals every single night so that the machinery for processing sugarcane could be smooth the next day. I cannot say that my father was a Caribbean monk, though there were a few transplanted and held in the New York Aquarium before he was born. They believe that by the time the Caribbean monk seal was placed on the endangered species list, it was already extinct. I cannot say that Clyde Gumbs, who died of prostate cancer, diagnosed too late, was a Caribbean monk. I cannot say he was a monk at all. I can only say he had very few earthly possessions, and he wore the same outfit every day. I can say, yes, he had habits and rituals. I can say when he lived in the Caribbean, he observed the sunrise and the sunset every morning and evening, squinting through a small digital camera. I can say, yes, he was curious and calm. And some people took advantage. I can say he was born Black, but I cannot say he was never afraid. What he died from, the opposite of a healthcare system, a machine that turns Black death into sugar, yes, I can say it is genocidal. Sometimes in Haiti and Jamaica, people swear they see a Caribbean monk. The scientific community believes this is impossible, saying they are probably hooded seals out of range. But if you happen by some miracle to see him, will you tell him, I say thank you for being Black and curious? Thank you for being calm and brave, and that I honor you for continuing to be who you were, no matter what they try to turn you into, despite their hunting every night, and say, I love you with a sweetness not of sugar, but of salt that won't dissolve. I love you with a black outliving empires in your name. Sunrise, sunset. Thank you.
That was awesome. That was beautiful. Oh,
Oh, thank you so much.
Really. Alexis, what inspired this?
You know, so really, I mean, and I read this excerpt that is dedicated to my father, and he really inspired this book. Really, my grief inspired me to write this book, because when my father passed away, I wasn't a person who was used to giving so much space to my emotions, but I had to. And, you know, I was crying every day. I found myself immersed in salt water in a particular way, and that my feelings felt like bigger than what I could hold in a human body. And I started to listen to whale sounds just as part of my meditation. And so then I needed to learn more. I mean, so this incredible thing happened where I happened to be on vacation. I happened to stay in Long Beach. It was really like a frequent flyer miles, hotel points dictated journey. But I ended up staying right between the Aquarium of the Pacific, which had this beautiful digital exhibition about the sounds of different whales from all over the world. And then this boat, it's like an old ocean liner called the Queen Mary, which anybody who lives in Long Beach knows it's now a tourist attraction. And they have, like, right now they probably have you can ice skate with Santa. It's this huge, huge boat, but it's the only one of its generation of ocean liners that is actually intact and maintained. It happens to be the boat that my grandmother migrated to the United States on. So this is where I found myself. And I was like, you know, sometimes the ocean is just trying to tell you something, you know, like that's it. And I actually started my journey of this research in the aquarium bookstore, because I just got all the guidebooks about marine mammals and started to read them. And then, you know, I just couldn't stop. So that's what inspired this.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So what do you want the world to, what's the message you want to pass on to the world from in this book?
You know, I think that the most important thing is our interconnectedness. I think that our species relates almost as if we're separate from the ocean. And, you know, this is why I'm so excited to follow the leadership and wisdom of marine scientists who are like, we have to look so closely at the ocean itself, all of the dynamics, the chemistry of the ocean, the life in the ocean. It is so relevant to all of the decisions that we make around climate, around population, migration. There really is nothing that the ocean doesn't touch. And of course, I know I'm speaking to people who know this and have designed their lives around the importance of the ocean. But I think that there's another, and, you know, my role as a writer is to really help people understand that there is no separation. It's not like we're humans and we can choose to have a nice relationship to the ocean. It's like we are already inherently in relationship to the ocean, really, whether we like it or not, you know, like it already is. And for me as a Black feminist, part of what I found was that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's this connection of how marine mammals are characterized that I feel is related to the ways that Black people are criminalized. But before that, and older than that, we understand that marine mammals are important ancestors in our lineage. And I believe that there is a relationship between especially dolphins and whales, so especially cetaceans in the Atlantic during the transatlantic slave trade, and in the Indian Ocean during the trans-Indian continuation of the slave trade of enslaved Africans, that is important. I know that there's an energetic connection, and this is something that I don't know if maybe the marine archaeologists who are doing research in the shipwrecked enslaving ships will find evidence of this, but to me, it's just an intuitive knowing that there's an energetic connection, because those ships that were used to make the triangle slave trade possible were also the ships that were used to hunt whales. And they moved along the same routes, and they moved in the same physical environment. I think that there's a physical environment, and then there's also an energetic environment. And I wonder about, what was the communication? Was there a supportive relationship, or even just a solidarity relationship between the marine mammals who were there physically along those routes and the enslaved ancestors who were also submerged in the bellies of ships, surviving or not surviving the Middle Passage? So I just want people to feel profoundly connected. What I found is that it's not only Black folks who are using this book. I just got a picture this morning via Twitter. There's like a really mostly white but multiracial group of students who are on strike in England in solidarity with university workers, and who are trying to have a union, and the university doesn't want them to have a union, all of this. And they're on the picket line reading Undrowned. And I'm like, well, what's the connection? But I think that it's connection itself. Once we realize that we're profoundly interconnected, and the ocean won't let us ignore that, right? Anyone who studies the ocean is like, you can specialize, but it's all connected, right? We'll realize that that applies to every area of life, that we're interconnected. If you're a university student, you can't separate yourself from the university workers. It's connected, right? You're connected by your environment. We're connected by our environment. And so that's really what I want the world to be able to know and have an emotional kind of soul connection to if they read this book.
That's so awesome. That's so profound. So what is your writing process like? And what advice do you have for upcoming writers?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is probably it's kind of a tired advice for writers. It's very simple. Write every day. My writing process is I write every day. And I know that can feel overwhelming to people who are like, but I have other things I have to do in my life. Like I might have a job, I might have a family, all of these things. And I just want to say that it doesn't matter how short a period of time you can set aside for writing, literally even 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but do it every day, because there's something about staying in that process that allows you to go deeper, even if it's not, you can't write 8 hours a day every day. Some people can. I don't have the luxury of writing 8 hours a day every day, but I can write every day. And the people who give me the advice to write every day were honestly Black working single mothers who hardly had any time at all, but they were like, but I have to write every day. And when I was a teenager, they told me that, and I was like, okay, I'm not a Black single working mother. I'm just a Black teenager who has to go to school, but I can wake up a little earlier and I can write every day. If they can write every day, certainly I can write every day. And so I've just kept that practice. With this book in particular, I just continued that. I would read about a particular marine mammal and I would write about it. There came a certain point where I realized I needed to share what I was learning immediately, which is usually not a part of my writing process. So I had these daily posts. Like I would have on Instagram a picture of this particular, if it was the Caribbean monk seal, a picture of the Caribbean monk seal, and then what I had written about it. And then people started to ask me to collect them into a book. So I didn't know that this was even going to be a book, but I knew that I wanted to share with my community what I was learning about marine mammals. So I did.
In summary, dedication, consistency, and you shared and had input from other people. That's that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We're inspired. We are enriched. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am going to buy your book. Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Any last comments, thoughts, or anything to share with us, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested if anybody in the audience has any questions. I'm very open to that. I'm not looking at the YouTube, so I can't see that chat, but if somebody who could transfer that into our Zoom chat, I'm so curious, because I think that marine scientists have a kinship in knowing of what I'm talking about. I think that any form of primary research that you do as a scientist, it also requires dedication, consistency, input from others, sharing. I think that's a part of your process too. And I would love to know, after listening to this particular excerpt or just this whole concept, if anyone has any questions.
So please, if you have any questions, share with us. Feel free to ask her any question. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, good question. I see this question.
How has your experience been as a Black woman author? Do you have a lot of support? Thank you for this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have so much support. I think that sometimes, I hear people and they're like, I made it here by myself and nobody thought I could do it. And I have an opposite experience. Like, I can't even name all of the people who have supported me, but primarily my family has supported me from a young age. When I was writing, they really valued that, and they were encouraging, and they really made sacrifices, financial and otherwise, so that I could go to writing camps, and so I could take writing classes, and so that I could really explore it and see where it was taking me as a gift and as a creative form. And then all along my journey, there just has been a lot of love and support, mainly and really most importantly from other Black women writers, but also people who aren't Black women writers who have supported me. So yeah, my experience has been really wonderful, which is to say it's been possible. I get to live a life where, you see me, I'm like surrounded by books and I get to read and write a lot. And it feels really affirming. Today I was talking about the example of these people who, I don't know these people. They have my book with them. They're protesting. They're on the picket line. They tweeted and said, it just was nourishing for them to be reading my book. And they could have chosen any book. And, the person who I think brought it to a teach-in, she's not a Black woman, but for some reason it resonated. And I feel supported by that. I think that it means that what I'm hoping for and the loving energy that I put out in my writing, it's being received.
There's this question: what has your relationship been with the ocean? Has it changed over time?
I love that question. So I come from a West Indian family, which you might see from what I wrote, or even that what my name is. But so I don't know if everybody from a Western family has the same experience, but my family, they were like, children can swim, just throw them in the water, you know, they'll remember. So that's who I was raised by. It was like, we have an inherent relationship to the ocean. You know, the amniotic fluid in my mother's body is like a small satellite ocean that I come from. And so I can just remember, you know. So my relationship to the ocean is that I belong there. At least that's what I was taught in my family. Now, when I was a child, I had this like, I just didn't want to put my face in the water. I didn't want the salt in my eyes. I didn't want that like burning feeling that you have when salt water gets in your eyes. So I would be in the ocean, but I just didn't want my head, you know, like to be under the water. And it's kind of hard to be in the ocean and like keep your head afloat. It's a pretty awkward thing. I called myself swimming kind of like a turtle in my childhood. Over time, I definitely have become more comfortable with being in the ocean. And a really important part of this is my grandfather, Jeremiah Gumbs, who taught me to float. And he would like literally hold me under my back and say, you know, you have to release to let the ocean hold you, which was hard because it wasn't my impulse. My impulse was like, keep your face out of this water. So to learn to release and understand that the salinity of the ocean can hold me up, he had to kind of be my training wheels. So I would trust him to hold me up, and he would recite poetry to me actually while he was helping me to feel peaceful enough to float. But now of course, that's my favorite thing to do. I love to float in the ocean. And because my people are shoreline people, island people, but even in terms of my US ancestors, Eastern Shore, Maryland people, Shinnecock people who are of the shoreline in Long Island, I feel like everywhere I trace my ancestry, we're always by the ocean. And so I understand that the ocean is home in an important and powerful way. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So when did you feel ready to publish your book?
You know, this book, it was interesting. So this is my 5th book. And again, like I said before, I didn't set out to write a book about marine mammals. You know, I'm a Black feminist. My other books have been about Black feminist theorists or about like research on mothering that I've done as a Black feminist scholar. And so this interspecies move was, I mean, it's somewhat predicted by the book that comes before this, which is called Dub, Finding Ceremony. And it was while I was writing that book that I realized, I was like, oh, I think I'm writing about my ancestors, but I had a human-centric idea of who my ancestors were. And then I was like, oh, wait, there are many species that are also my ancestors. And that became part of that book. So that did kind of lead into this. But for me, this was just a series of Instagram posts. That's what it was. It was for me. And it was really people reading it who were like, well, we appreciate looking at it on your Instagram, but we want to be able to hold it in a book. We want to be able to come back to it in that way. And so that was how I knew. And the series that it's part of is called the Emergent Strategy series, which is created by my dear sister friend, Adrienne Marie Brown, who wrote a book called Emergent Strategy, which I would recommend to all of you because it's all about how can people who are organizing for social change look to nature as a teacher and as a leader. And that's what this book is. It's just very specific to marine mammals and to the ocean. And so I realized, oh, it belongs in that conversation. And people said to do it. So what the people know. And that's how I knew that it had a use in the world beyond just my process of sharing my learning and my daily musings.
So, in what ways do you see studying and helping marine mammals help the human world?
In every way, in every way. I mean, I think that a world that supports the lives of marine mammals supports the lives of all mammals, right? So the work to combat the pollution of our oceans, to really look at the rising temperatures in our oceans and the impact of that, that's all impacting us. It might impact marine mammals first because the ocean is taking so much of the brunt of climate change and really insulating us and protecting us for the moment from the kind of extreme temperature changes that we would be experiencing otherwise. But it's not separate, right? So this is, I love Christiana's question because it's almost like, it would be nice to be like, oh, we're okay, but maybe these poor marine mammals, we should help them out. And it's like, anything that's harming them, it's harming us. Whether we realize it or whether it's publicized is another question, but absolutely we're helping the human world whenever we attend to and take action that is life-giving towards our relatives, the marine mammals.
Okay, have you ever encountered marine science spaces that have used you or diversity in general in a performative way? And if so, how did you respond to it?
This is such a good question. So, I mean, it's interesting. I think that, since writing this book, it is interesting that like marine scientists would not necessarily have known who I was before. And now they do. And I have had some offers, to show up performatively in marine science spaces or at scientific association meetings that have a history of not being inclusive of scientists of color. And though I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I charge them like, I say that I'm going to charge them like this huge amount of money, right? So I'm like, sure, I'll do it for like really more than I actually charge, right? So because I think that this word that you use is the perfect word in the question, this word performative. It's like, do they just want someone to speak at their conference who's Black, but then they're not going to change systemically what they do? They're not going to create programs that mentor and support there to actually be more Black people who are in the sciences and who are become experts in these fields that can take over this organization, and no, they're not invested in it in that way. They don't actually value the perspective that I have, which is a Black centering perspective. They just want to perform inclusivity. And I'm like, okay, how much do you really value it? They don't value it that much. I'll tell you that, because then they're like, oh no, we can only pay you this much. And I'm like, okay, well then I will just not be there. And you'll continue to show up as the white organization that you are. And I think that they do have to be challenged. And I think that's part of what my own ethics are. They do have to be challenged to actually transform. And I don't want to be a part of them having a shiny exterior that's like, yeah, of course, we think about race. We love diversity, when really they actually are trying to hold on to their own power. They don't want to redistribute resources in a way that would support what Kathy Cohen calls transformative diversity. So inclusive diversity says like, oh yeah, we have a couple of like Black people here, but we're doing things the same way we always have done them. Whereas transformative diversity says, no, if we're going to actually honor the priorities of Black scientists and the communities they're accountable to and the reasons that they are doing this work, our whole organization has to change to reflect that. Many of the organizations I've encountered don't seem ready for that. So yes, but that's what needs to happen in my view.
And Kayla Williams says, do you think you said all you need to say in Undrowned? Are you open to writing a part 2?
Thank you for that question, Kayla. I'm always going to be writing about the ocean. I just, my mom was like, what do you want for Christmas? And, it's always books, that's how I am, but it's all books about the ocean. I was like, I want to continue to learn more and read more and write about the ocean for sure. So I don't know if there'll be like a Undrowned, Back and Better Than Ever, the sequel, I don't know if it'll be like that, but I know that the ocean will always be a part of my work. And in fact, in what I've been writing since, I've been doing a lot of research. I've been doing a lot of research about astronomy and ecological study that Arawak and Carib people in the Caribbean and in Central and South America have been doing. And it's still an interspecies encounter. It's still a form of science. And I was just actually sorting through those poems, and like most of them are really about potential relationships with animals. So yeah, so the work for sure continues. I don't think I've said all that I have to say. And I know I haven't learned all that I have to learn. It's actually more the case that writing this book has let other people know that I'm interested. So people are constantly teaching me new things. Hopefully all of you will too, brilliant Black marine scientists. Yeah, I have so much to learn, and I'm so excited about that learning.
Thank you so much. That Imperator asked, what are the biggest obstacles that must be overcome when it comes to making marine biology accessible to Black folks, particularly poor Black folks, Black girls, women, Black folks with disabilities?
Oh yeah, I love this question because it's crucial. It's crucial. And it goes back to this theme of that we're not separate, like we're not separate from the ocean. Even if we have no access to the ocean, even if we live in a landlocked place, even if we never see the ocean in our lifetime, and that hasn't been my experience as a person who, major part of my growing up is in the Caribbean, but that is the case for many people, that they have not seen the ocean yet in their lives. And, I guess I have two examples to talk about this. One is in the book launch event for this book. My dear friend Adrienne, who I mentioned before, she asked this question, or maybe she moderated this question during our conversation about what do we do when we feel disconnected from the ocean and we can't go to the ocean. This book came out during quarantine. A lot of people couldn't go anywhere. And if you weren't already at the ocean, then you weren't going to be going to the ocean. And what I reminded us is that the ocean is within us. Like we are salt water. We are saltwater beings. So if I cry sitting right here and, the ocean is nowhere in earshot or sight, the ocean is still present. If I'm sweating, which I am, probably because I'm so excited about this conversation, the ocean is here with me. And so I think that when we think about access to the ocean as something that can only happen for people who have the privilege of being able to take a field trip or go on an expedition or do a research cruise or, these things that are great, and I definitely want Black people to have access to, I think that we have to remember that our connection to the ocean is something that is deeper and that we always have access to it wherever we are. That's one of the things that I appreciated. There was a review of my book that a writer wrote a review of it in conversation with this award-winning Netflix film, My Octopus Friend, which is about this white freediver who is friends with my octopus teacher. I think maybe it's my octopus teacher. So obviously marine mammals are my teachers. The octopus is his teacher. He lives in South Africa. He benefits from apartheid. He's a rich white South African man who lives in this expensive oceanside house, and he dives and looks at this octopus every day, right? And he learns from this octopus. So it's almost the extreme version of what I'm talking about, because I have all these activities in the back of my book that are about learning from marine mammals. None of them require you to go anywhere. They really, and I was really specific to make sure that they're accessible, especially for Black folks with disabilities and poor Black folks, to say like, any of the activities in the back of my book, you can do without spending any money, without going anywhere, without living near the ocean. You can do them because they're like about breathing, they're about listening, they're about paying attention to ourselves. And the reviewer was noting that. He was like, okay, so if you wanted to try to have an octopus teacher in the way that this person who's featured in this film did, you have to actually benefit from all these generations of wealth. You have to, the people who were supposed to live by that ocean have to be displaced by that land, from that land, by the invasions of South Africa. And then now you can have this sweet relationship with this octopus, as opposed to wherever we are, we can reclaim our relationship with the ocean, and we can study marine life because we are marine life.
Thank you so much. Keep the questions coming, please. I'm having such a wonderful time with Alexis. Alexis, it's, wow. I'm truly blown away. Imperator, Christiana, Camille, Kayla, Zaka, Kelsey, thank you for your questions. Please keep the questions coming. Okay. This question is for you. Have you written any children's books? If not, will you?
I do want to. I haven't written any children's books yet. I'm constantly telling stories to my nieces who are 3 years old and 5 years old. And actually, I was so excited to learn about Mermaid Kenzie because my 5-year-old niece's name is Kenzie. And I was like, oh, I can't wait for, I'm like, I pre-ordered the book already. I'm like so excited for her to be able to see that reflection of a Black mermaid with her name. I think it's very important. And just like, you know, this earlier brilliant question about accessibility, I think this conversation about the ocean, absolutely children can understand it. You know, just like my family was like, girl, you from the ocean, swim, you know, like, I think that there's a way that from a very young age, children can understand. Actually, my same niece, I think this is her favorite book. She got a lot of favorite books because she takes after her auntie. She loves books, but there's a book called Shark Lady, and it's about a white marine scientist, a woman who studies sharks. And, you know, she faced sexism, and it's a children's book. And they talk about the sexism she faced. They talked about how for her to be a marine scientist, there were all these barriers, but she was really committed to studying sharks. And so she did, and, you know, she became the Shark Lady. And I think that there's so many stories. I mean, I mean, just to raise my hand, I would be excited to partner with any of you to write a children's book about your story of becoming a marine scientist, you know, so kids can see that example of the perseverance that you have and the love that you have for the ocean, because it's inspiring. It's very, very inspiring. So no, I haven't written any children's books, not yet, but I'm down, and I'm excited for that to be a next step.
Yeah, that's good to know. And Hakim says we need another oracle.
Okay, you want to do an oracle? Do you want to choose a number?
No.
Is that what you mean by oracle? When I do oracle, it's like you choose a number and I read that page. And you could choose a number between, I don't know, I guess you could choose a number between 1 and 174 if you want. But we'll see if that's what Hakeem is actually asking for.
So Hakeem choose. Then Imperator says, how has marine biology changed you, both in terms of knowledge and as a person?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think the major change is that it really has, there's just so much awe, and there's so many things that I would never imagine are possible for mammals, except that marine biologists have told the story of the fact that the harbor seal slows down its heart from like 60 beats a minute to 3 beats a minute when it dives. And that a mammal can have a heart that has that capacity of variance, intentional variance, because the harbor seal, of course, is breathing through the oxygen in their blood. They're not taking a breath. The oxygen in their blood has to continue to allow their body to function. So they slow their heartbeat that much. And then I thought about, what does that mean for me? I mean, I'm not literally, diving into the ocean to the depths that a harbor seal dives. But what if I paid attention to the speed of my heart? What does that mean for me? Does it mean that, okay, there's moments where I need to take a breath? Does it mean that there's certain spaces where my heart moves differently and I can learn something from that? I mean, there's just so much. There's so much to be learned, and it is changing me as a person all the time. And there are certainly things I know that I never would have known. Not only would I not have known them as facts, I wouldn't have imagined they were possible. I didn't know that was a thing, that you could change your heart rate that much, in a moment. I would have been like, yeah, that's science fiction. But no, that's actually just science fact. So yeah, I feel very grateful for everyone who has studied marine mammals and written about it, because I know I haven't learned even a small percentage of everything there is to learn, but what I have learned has definitely changed me.
I misunderstood. There's this question here. Let me go and see. Okay, Imperator asked, do you believe traditional African religions / folklore could be used to draw connections to the importance of marine biology for Black folks, such as Goddess Yemoja?
Definitely. Yemoja, as someone in the Yoruba tradition, Olokun, also in the Yoruba tradition, as a deity that's about the depth of the ocean, which are so important. I think so important, especially for those of us connecting across the Atlantic. I think that those stories are really important. Part of my lineage is Ashanti lineage. So coming out of Akan cosmology, there's one of the praised names of God is Totorobonsu, which is which could be seen as like the sea monster or the whale or the powerful entity in the ocean. I think about that connection, and I think about, in particular, what my Ashanti ancestors who survived the Middle Passage, how they thought about their experience and how those ideas must have been part of how they processed their own relationship to the ocean. I think that there's so many stories about the ocean. For sure, every African and African diasporic people who have any relationship to the ocean, which based on what I was saying earlier, we all do because we're beings of salt water. But especially who live near the ocean have stories about it. And we have to, just like there's so many stories about the stars and the sky, there's these stories about the ocean because it's so massive, it's so deep, it's so profound that it causes us to be creative to even try to understand it or describe it. And I think that that's beautiful. And absolutely, I think those stories are important. I think it's helpful and useful to be able to tie those stories in, even while learning, quote unquote, new information or doing scientific documentation of information of what the ocean is teaching us.
Then Amelia says, is there a marine mammal that is speaking to you at this moment? The North Atlantic right whale is everywhere in my department now, and I would like to get to know the ocean relative better.
Yeah, you know what? In fact, the North Atlantic right whale is talking to me. I mean, one thing is that they're migrating now. So they're migrating past me right now. They're further south. So like probably they're near Florida now. They have their birthing this time of year, maybe like a week or two ago. Their calves are being born off the coast of Georgia. So they're literally nearby. And that might be why they're everywhere in your department. People are thinking about them because of that, but also because they are so endangered, and they are the whale. They have been one of the most hunted whales in the history of industrial whaling, and right now they're also one of the major victims of the fishing industry. So like the large fishing boats, basically North Atlantic whales are dying because they're being stabbed by the propellers or by the nets. They're being entangled in the nets of the mainstream fishing industry. So it makes sense that people who are paying attention, because they could go extinct. They are one of the marine mammal species, in addition to the vaquita, which is more off the coast of Mexico in the Pacific. But in the Atlantic, that is the marine mammal species most at risk of extinction at this time. So I think it's good that people are paying attention and that you're listening. My relationship to the North Atlantic right whale is also very old, because in my Shinnecock ancestry, the Shinnecock have been in sacred relationship with the North Atlantic right whale for thousands of years. So part of the life cycle of our Shinnecock ancestors was a North Atlantic right whale would beach, and there was all this ceremony around it. There was the whale listening that was happening. There was that event. It was understood as one right whale would sacrifice itself for the life of the whole community. And so that was like the bones were part of the structures of the houses. Every single part of that whale became a life-giving source for the community. And in fact, if you look at the sovereign seal of the Shinnecock Indian Nation, you'll see two right whales right at the top, because we understand that we would not have survived and our community would not have existed without that particular whale. So they're always speaking to me, because that's I feel like my very existence is dependent very specifically on that marine mammal, in a way that I know the story of. And of course, there's stories that I'm still learning. So yeah, I'm glad that you bring the North Atlantic right whale. Absolutely makes sense to focus, because here's the thing. The name North Atlantic right whale comes from the fact that they move very slowly. They swim very slowly. They traditionally have been species that live more than a century, they're not in a rush, right? So they move slowly. Industrial whalers took advantage of that, because they were like, this is the easiest whale for us to hunt, because it's not going to swim away quickly. So we can harpoon it and we can kill it. And so that's why they focused and killed so many North Atlantic right whales. But what that also means is that when the fishing industry says they don't have the technology to not run into these whales and stab them with the propellers, which is what is happening in the ocean right now, it's not true. I mean, they are so slow moving that boats with none of the technology that these current fishing vessels have could know exactly where they were and hunt them and kill them. But now the argument is like, oh, but how do we even know where they are? We don't have the technology not to be able to crash into them. And it's like, listen, of any whale, that's one that you can swerve around that one. It's moving so slowly, you don't have to run into them. Anyway, obviously I feel strongly about this. So that confirms what Amelia is saying. The North Atlantic right whale is speaking.
Thank you for sharing such insights with us. Then Friedman asks, my family is from Caribbean and Central America. tourism plays a large part in the money that is made in each country, but its negative impact can affect the very ocean they need for survival. How can tourism work with the Caribbean to protect the ocean and not continue to just take from it?
Yeah, I think that there's a very important role. Tourism is a problem, and maybe that whole global relation of tourism is something that needs to change. But while it is still a major industry, also in the countries where we are from, my family in the Caribbean as well, I think that marine scientists actually have a role to play in this, because an educational turn within tourism, like if the value of people's visitation was that they had the opportunity to learn about an environment that they don't have access to where they live, that by implication means that the state and the industry have a vested interest in preserving that natural environment, those species that are important and indigenous to those areas, because then the tourists can't come look at them if they are destroyed, right? So I think that understanding that tourism, like every other part of capitalism, has been used in an extractive way, especially in the relationship between Europe and the Americas in relationship to the Caribbean and Central America. If we could, I think you probably already know this, Vidman, like you probably are doing this, which is why you're asking this question. But just to say that I agree that what it would look like for tourism to work with the Caribbean to protect the ocean would be to say, if you're going to come to the Caribbean, you have the opportunity. Like, what if you could see a Caribbean monk seal? You know, what if the lives of the Caribbean monk seal have been preserved in such a way that it's like, you know, what's so valuable about being able to come here to Jamaica, for example, is it's the only place in the world where you can see a real live Caribbean monk seal. And that value means that everyone has a vested interest in protecting them and in protecting the environmental factors that would allow them to thrive, right? So for our different species that are very specific, you know, there's a butterfly that's only in Anguilla. I mean, especially when you're dealing with islands, there are very specific species that are only in this particular place. And what if people were coming to these places, not just to escape how cold it is where they live, you know, in Europe and Canada and North America, and to be like, oh, I get to go to the beach and I get to, you know, have a suntan. But what if they were like, oh, wow, I could actually experience an environmental reality that is unique to this place? And what if tourists took their power to be like, I'm not going to go. I'm only going to go on vacation. Yeah, I want to go to the beach, but I'm only going to go to places that have something that I can engage in, where the government of that place has valued their environment such that I can have this unique environmental experience that I can't have anywhere else. That's what I would envision as someone who has a long-term, you know, tourist abolitionist politic, but also has a family and ancestry relationship to places that are very dependent on a tourist economy for the current times.
Thank you so much. Then I have two questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Imperator says, how do you spell the name of the Ashanti sea monster that you mentioned before? And Hakim says 53.
Cool. It's Totoro Bonsu. I just put it in the chat. So it's TOTOROBONSU. Of course, it's spelled different ways because, you know, it's a different alphabet. It's a different language system, but that's the way that I've seen it. So if you wanted to research more, that's how I would suggest spelling it. And then you'll find different stories and you'll find different translations of it. And yes, 53. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, that's a good number. Okay, so this is on 53. From the sky, a dolphin pod of Lissodelphis, black and white dolphins with no fins, which travel by the hundreds up to 3,000 strong, would look like a smooth Black continent of movement. From underwater, it would look like a white cloud that somehow submerged. That's how I imagine it. Collectively echolocating for food, they would be impossible to ignore. Though only a few come to the surface at a time, they travel by the hundreds or thousands, so sleek. And their cousins, other dolphins with fins not so smooth, they welcome them into the pod too. That's how I think about us sometimes, those of us who have chosen to move together through this. We are perceived so differently from different directions. Human observers mistake Lissodelphus for seals or sea lions or even for penguins sometimes, which is to say, maybe it's not so much about being recognized as who we are as it is about staying together, feeding each other, knowing where we are and moving through. My love to my pod in all directions, the smooth and the not quite so smooth, those of you showing your back and those showing your belly, those of you breaking through the surface and those staying in the deep. It's an honor to be in the midst of you. Look around, listen out. Here we are.
Oh, you still my heart. I had a wonderful time with you.
Me
and I don't know
too.
how the time ran away with. Oh, I wish we could continue on and on and on and on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, the book giveaway. Okay. There's a book giveaway. The question is, what is the closest living relative of the Caribbean monk seal? That's the question.
So please answer it and get a free book.
Yes.
Thank you so much for reading with us today. And if you have any more questions for the author, you can follow her on her media accounts. She's on IG. And let me type in here. Please, could you type it in the chat box so people can follow her?
Yes, I just typed it at Alexis Pauline.
Okay, thank you. And your Twitter handle, please.
Same. It's all at Alexis Pauline.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful having you.
Yay. Okay, see you at Trap Yoga.
Hey, so we are actually still live. We're going to see if we can get someone to answer the question. So can you repeat the question for the book giveaway?
Yes, the question is, and somebody already answered it in the chat correctly. What is the closest living relative of the Caribbean monk seal?
Okay. Oh, yeah. So we have the correct answer in our Zoom chat. The Hawaiian monk seal. Karen put it as well. Okay. I think we got to give out two. We did. Karen Lee. I think we got to give out two. Karen Lee, if you could send an email, I'm going to put the email in the chat and put in the subject book giveaway from BIMS Week. Book giveaway from BIMS Week.
Yay! Happy BIMS Week, everyone.
Thank y'all. Bye.